You can see the opposite shore with the naked eye. You could swim across it. Yet, one of the biggest nations in Europe cannot build a bridge there. And the reason is not engineering. It is because someone makes a lot more money when that bridge never gets built. It is surreal. You stand on the continent, look ahead, and you can see Sicily as if it were just a short street crossing. Sunlight hits the water and the reflection reveals the real distance, little more than 1.8 miles. There are people who swim across it just for sport. The scene feels almost ironic. Two pieces of land separated by a thin line of water, yet divided by something much bigger. Cars, trucks, dreams, and businesses wait for the ferry while the entire world wonders why a suspension bridge still does not exist there. Poor countries build bridges that defy oceans and storms. Here in the heart of wealthy Europe, no one can connect to points that you can literally see with no effort. It feels like a ready-made joke. And we are not talking about some unknown place. This tiny stretch of sea has a name, history, and fame: the Strait of Messina. A narrow, short, and crossable strait that became a symbol of national impotence. The frustration is almost tangible when a local says, "If I could run across, I already would have." Engineers look at this map and see a paradise for any grand infrastructure project. The distance is small. The impact would be massive. The lives of millions would change. There is only one detail that nobody likes to admit. The reason for failure goes far beyond engineering, and the story only gets stranger from here. 5 million people live on the island, and they live isolated. It is as if the entire population of Ireland had been placed somewhere with no fast exit to the rest of the country. The dream of having the Sicily Bridge has appeared in political speeches since before many residents were born. The rest of Italy keeps moving while on the island, time feels stuck in an eternal waiting line. Palermo is not a tiny forgotten town. It is one of the largest metropolitan areas in the country, bubbling with culture and energy. But that energy fades when traveling depends on hours of waiting and traffic at the port. Any unexpected climate issue or seismic activity turns a basic trip into a tiring odyssey. Young people look toward the horizon and see their future. On a departing plane, the local economy slowly bleeds. Products arrive more expensive because every delivery depends on ferries and trucks that operate on limited schedules. Companies avoid investing in the region because everything is slow, bureaucratic, and costly. Many residents whisper that this benefits the Italian Mafia since the more isolated the island is, the more control it keeps over business flows. And that is where frustration hits even harder. All of this happens in front of a strait so small that you can see the other side without effort. On paper, it would be easy to cross the Strait of Messina and finally integrate the island with the mainland. Instead, reality shows an improvised system that looks like something from another era, and when you discover how this crossing works today, everything becomes even more surreal. What exists today is not a bridge. It is a daily waiting ritual. Endless lines, engines running, impatient horns. Hundreds of ferries cross every day, carrying cars, trucks, and even tourist buses. For visitors, it feels picturesque. For residents, it is a scheduled imprisonment. And this happens despite decades of planning for an infrastructure project that never leaves the paper. The system operates 24 hours a day like an improvised assembly line, but a simple change in the wind is enough to delay or stop ferries. One storm and everything shuts down. Meanwhile, the yearly budget to maintain this operation could easily be redirected to something smarter, like a suspension bridge that would solve the problem once and for all. Drivers learn patience the same way someone learns a new language. The stories repeat: refrigerated trucks losing value by the minute, tourists missing train connections, residents missing medical appointments. And in a place where time means money, every delay becomes a loss. Quietly, the Italian Mafia watches and profits from the old system. And when the subject is wasted money, delays, and logistical chaos, the cost is not just financial, it is emotional. People start believing the island will never change. But the moment someone tries to propose building the Sicily Bridge, a new obstacle appears. Not a politician, not an engineer, but something that comes from the sea, literally. Beneath the calm surface, the Strait of Messina hides a silent war. This is not a metaphor. It is to seas with opposite personalities colliding like caged animals. On one side, the Tyrrhenian Sea pushes cold and dense water. On the other, the Ionian Sea brings warmer and lighter currents. When they meet, they create whirlpools strong enough to pull ships downward. Imagine driving on a road where the asphalt moves in the opposite direction. That is exactly what happens to vessels at certain hours of the day. Researchers describe it as a reversed river running through the sea. No one controls it, and no one negotiates with it. Nature sets the rules, and any mistake is punished. If it is difficult for a ferry to keep a straight path in this aquatic chaos, imagine crossing it with massive, heavy structures. A suspension bridge demands stability, predictability, and precise calculations. Here, every hour of the day completely changes the logic of the water. There is no routine, only unpredictability and risk. And the sea does not wait for engineering to be ready. If what happens on the surface already feels intense, what lurks beneath is even more disturbing. Before talking about earthquakes and tectonic plates, there is an ancient story about monsters that swallowed ships. And as crazy as it sounds, maybe the Greeks were not exaggerating. For centuries, sailors trembled before crossing the Strait of Messina. It was not cheap superstition, it was survival. When the currents accelerate, they can reach speeds comparable to a slow city car, around 12 to 13 miles per hour. For an ancient ship, that was a death sentence. For a human swimming, it meant give up or be swallowed. Only after you understand the physical phenomenon does the myth make sense. The Greeks named the dangers Scylla and Charybdis, a monster on each side. Anyone who avoided one would be dragged toward the other. They were not inventing monsters to tell stories around a fire. They were trying to explain the real fear of watching boats flip like toys. Modern research has found traces of dozens of ancient shipwrecks, some with amphorae and preserved wood fragments. It is like a museum of tragedies hidden on the seafloor. When archaeologists study these routes, they find a pattern. Every captain tried to avoid the center of the currents. Even without maps, sailors knew that challenging that passage meant risking everything. And if the past was already terrifying, the future seems even more challenging for anyone considering the Sicily Bridge. Because the real threat is not in the water, but in what is happening beneath the ground. Something massive is moving slowly, and no one can stop it. Beneath the blue water, there is a slow and constant movement that no one can see. The African tectonic plate is pushing Europe the same way a rhinoceros pushes a fragile door. This collision is not symbolic. It creates a zone of extreme risk. Geologists call it intense seismic activity. Residents say the ground shakes whenever it wants. Building anything here would already be bold. But building a massive infrastructure project is like trying to balance a house of cards on top of a running washing machine. Every year, the Earth's crust makes small adjustments, as if it were stretching. These movements seem invisible day to day, but for a megastructure, they are direct hits. Imagine trying to build a skyscraper on a soccer field while the field shifts a few millimeters each month. It sounds tiny, but it is enough to crack concrete, stress cables, and compromise everything. In some areas of Sicily, the soil literally slides, as if the ground were tired of staying in the same place. Nothing here remains completely still. And if that silent force already feels intimidating, wait until you understand what happened when all that accumulated energy decided to release at once. One early morning turned the history of the region into tragedy. And the scars remain visible today in every building that is still trying to stand. It was the early morning of December 28, 1908. The city was still asleep when the ground began to scream. Buildings shook, walls opened like wet paper, and in less than 30 seconds, Messina no longer existed. People tried to run, but the ground moved beneath their feet. When everything stopped, nothing was standing. The destruction was so brutal that researchers still analyze that event in the Strait of Messina region. But the worst was still coming. A few minutes later, the sea silently pulled back. Witnesses said they could see the bottom of the harbor, as if someone had dragged the water away. Anyone who knew the legends felt the same fear as ancient sailors. The monster was returning. A tsunami advanced violently and swallowed what was left. In seconds, the water completed what the earthquake had started. The death toll was around 80,000 people. It was as if an entire city had disappeared from the map in a single morning. Streets became rivers of debris, and entire families simply ceased to exist. For those who survived, it was not a natural event. It was a final blow, an open wound that never healed. From that moment on, any idea of building a bridge in that region seemed like an insult to common sense. And in the face of this collective trauma, it is not hard to understand the resistance when someone mentions building the Sicily Bridge in that location. Because if the sea is capable of destroying everything, what about what lies beneath it? The next obstacle is not on the surface, but at the bottom. A place so unstable, it challenges even the most experienced engineers. The bottom of the strait looks like a calm desert until you try to anchor something in it. There is no solid rock, only layers of sand, mud, and unstable sediments. Engineers say that building there would be like trying to drive a stake into gelatin while someone shakes the table. Every meter drilled reveals a new problem, as if the sea were hiding an uncomfortable secret. To build a structure of that size, massive foundations would need to be anchored to the seabed. But the ground offers no resistance. The weight would slowly sink, tilting everything. In a normal project, the foundation is the strongest point. Here, it would be the weakest. A suspension bridge depends on perfect balance. If the ground does not hold, nothing holds. Technical studies show that the seabed can slide during storms, like beach sand being dragged by stronger waves. Imagine placing a tower hundreds of feet tall on a carpet that moves every time the sea breathes. The risk is so absurd that many engineers privately admit they prefer not to get involved. It is better to protect their reputation than face that nightmare. And even if every physical challenge were solved, the most unpredictable obstacle would still remain: the human history of the island. When talking about the Strait of Messina, it is not only geology or engineering. It is identity, pride, and a land that never truly felt part of Italy. When someone sets foot in Sicily, they do not feel just an island. They feel a separate civilization. The streets carry accents, flavors, and symbols that do not exist anywhere else in the country. Its history was not written in a straight line. It was shaped by invasions, power shifts, and cultures that arrived and left deep scars. First came the Greeks, then the Romans, then Arabs, Normans, and Spaniards. Each group left something: cuisine, architecture, beliefs. Sicilians often joke that they are Italians by accident, and it is not an exaggeration. Even if the map says the island belongs to the country, the heart of the people never fully aligned with the mainland. This explains why any major infrastructure project coming from Rome is met with suspicion. For many locals, it feels as if the continent is always trying to impose something. The local identity is so strong that progress often sounds like domination. They learn to resist not only invaders, but also empty political promises. That cultural resistance creates an invisible barrier to the Sicily Bridge, because before building a physical bridge, an emotional one would need to be built. And when you go back in time, you realize that the first attempt to connect the island to the mainland happened more than 2,000 years ago. In 251 BC, when Rome captured 140 war elephants from the Carthaginians, an unexpected problem appeared: how to get those massive animals to the other side of the strait. There was no modern technology or advanced engineering, but there was creativity. Metellus ordered an improvised bridge made of boats and floating barrels. It was the first documented physical connection between the mainland and Sicily. Soldiers tied ships side by side, placed wooden planks on top and created a corridor wide enough for elephants to cross. The scene must have looked surreal. Giant animals walking over the sea while soldiers ran around hoping nothing would sink. The bridge shook, swayed, and seemed ready to collapse at every step, but it worked. This story became almost a local legend because it raises an uncomfortable question. If the Romans did it more than 2,000 years ago using ropes and wood, why can't a modern nation build a suspension bridge of just a few miles today? The provocation is constant and embarrassing for Italian politicians. But that crossing awakened something deeper, the idea that the strait could be conquered. Since then, rulers and engineers have kept the same dream alive. But as time passed, it became clear that building the bridge is not just about engineering. It is a battle of power, vanity, and ego. When Mussolini looked at the map and saw the Strait of Messina, he did not see water, he saw a stage. A gigantic bridge there would be the perfect monument to show the world the power of his regime. It was not about connecting people, it was about immortalizing his name. He wanted the strait to bow before his ambition. Architects were summoned, huge models were built, and fiery speeches promised to make Italy the most modern nation in Europe. Mussolini spoke as if the bridge already existed, as if the past could be erased with a snap of his fingers. Everything seemed inevitable, like destiny had chosen that moment. But the world had other plans. War approached like thunder. While Mussolini dreamed of skyscrapers and concrete, the country was collapsing from within. There were no resources, no stability, no peace. Each explosion that destroyed roads and factories pushed the dream further away. Reality crushed the propaganda. The project was swallowed by history. Ironic to the extreme, Mussolini wanted to build the bridge to prove strength, but the war he fueled destroyed everything around him. When the bombs stopped, the regime fell and the dream was buried. Yet the idea of the Sicily Bridge did not die. It just passed to the next generation. Those who believed economic progress could finally make it real. In the 1950s and 60s, Italy rose from the ashes. Highways appeared where there was only dirt. Factories exploded with production, and cities grew like never before. The country breathed confidence. The logic was simple. If we rebuilt all of this so fast, why not finally connect Sicily to the mainland? It seemed like only a matter of time. Newspapers printed optimistic headlines. Politicians posed for photos pointing at maps with a winner's smile. Studies began, committees were formed, specialists were hired. The message was always the same. The bridge is coming. It was sold as the infrastructure project that would turn southern Italy into an economic powerhouse. But behind the cameras, the reality was different. Each new government changed priorities, changed strategies, even changed the excuses. Investments came and went like tides, while the North received railways, industries, and wealth. The promise of the bridge was repeated like a mantra without ever leaving the speeches. People began to notice an annoying pattern. Every election reignited the dream. Every term buried it again. The bridge became an inside joke. Only 5 more years, they said. 5 years. For 40 years, till the government decided to do something final, creating a company dedicated exclusively to the Sicily Bridge. In 1981, the government took what it called a final step. It created Strait of Messina S.p.A., a state-owned company with only one purpose: to build the bridge over the Strait of Messina. Elegant offices, important positions, endless meetings. On paper, it looked like the beginning of a revolution. In practice, it was like opening a factory with no machinery. For years, more and more studies were funded. International consultants, feasibility reports, geological research. Everything generated mountains of documents, but no actual construction. The entire country watched as the company accumulated expenses. Strangely, no one could explain why so much money was being spent without placing a single brick on the ground. Hundreds of millions of euros were burned on bureaucracy. Some executives said they were in the analysis phase. Others claimed they were waiting for favorable political conditions. Meanwhile, the administrative structure grew like an organism that only feeds, never produces. It was the perfect entity for those who profit without delivering results. And the longer it dragged on, the more people asked the obvious question: who benefits from a company that has existed for decades and never built anything? The answer begins to appear when a new player enters the story, one of the most powerful and discreet groups in Italian history. When the new budget was revealed, the country was stunned. More than 13.5 billion euros to build a bridge only 3 kilometers long. That amount could finance dozens of modern schools, fully equipped hospitals, or entire subway lines. Some analysts say it would be enough to pave roads around Sicily twice. And all of that for a project no one knows will even stand. The number becomes even more absurd when compared to other megastructures around the world. Asian countries have built larger and more complex bridges for much less. The cost of the Sicily Bridge grew so much that it became a joke among international engineers. Each budget revision adds another zero, as if someone were playing with public money. And where does that money go? Part goes to studies. Part goes to consulting firms. Part goes to companies that appear out of nowhere and disappear afterwards. Journalistic investigations revealed that a massive portion of the budget never reaches the construction phase. It evaporates along the way, as if the entire system were designed to spend, not to build. And when that much money is involved, interests appear, and they appear fast. Some even say the bridge was never meant to be built, only to be financed, because an eternal project generates eternal cash flow. And that is when the most unexpected and most dangerous player enters the story. In southern Italy, there is a force that does not appear on maps, yet controls everything that gets built. The Italian Mafia is not a movie stereotype. It is a structure that operates like a multinational corporation. The Cosa Nostra dominates Sicily, while the 'Ndrangheta controls Calabria with an iron fist. Wherever there is construction, there is interest. Police reports describe the 'Ndrangheta as one of the richest criminal organizations on the planet, surpassing many legitimate corporations. They do not need to show up armed at construction sites. They show up with contracts. They participate through clean companies with apparently legal bids. Whenever the government announces a major infrastructure project, they smell opportunity. The model is simple: control the supply of concrete, trucks, material transportation, and debris disposal. Every truck that moves generates money. Every delay generates even more. It does not matter if the bridge is never completed. Profit comes from the process, not the result. While the country talks about progress, they count invoices. And that is why, when someone mentions the Strait of Messina, these groups do not think about engineering. They think about cash flow. For them, the bridge is not a monument of connection. It is an open vault. And that is only the first layer of the problem, because there is an even smarter way to profit without building anything. When the consortium responsible for the Sicily Bridge opened bidding, it looked like the beginning of a new era. Companies from around the world sent proposals with shiny models, drone footage crossing the strait, and promises of efficiency. But behind the scenes, the game was already decided. Whoever controls the companies that supply everything, from cement to the final bolt, is the real winner. The strategy is silent and extremely profitable. Intermediary companies enter as service providers, offering logistics, transportation of materials, and debris disposal. No flashy names, no explicit scandals. But when investigators follow the money trail, they find direct connections to groups that officially do not exist. They place their hands on the money flow without building a single beam. The trick is simple. The longer the process lasts, the more profitable it becomes. Planning changes mean new contracts. Technical revaluations mean new consultancy. Every delay puts more money in circulation. And a suspension bridge is the perfect environment for that strategy. A project so complex, it will always require new studies. That is why the real interest is not in the finished bridge. It is in the bridge under construction, or better yet, eternally under construction. As long as the project exists, the contracts keep coming. And the most surprising part is that this is not an accident. There is an even smarter plan, one that makes every delay look intentional. Here is the revelation that changes everything. The Mafia does not want the bridge to be finished. They want it to never be completed. Because as long as the project exists, the money flows. If the bridge is completed, the vault closes. But while it stays under study, under analysis, under revision, every new stage opens new contracts for transportation, concrete, permits, disposal, and logistics. An engineer who worked on public projects in southern Italy said something shocking. A completed bridge is worth a fortune. A bridge that never ends is worth billions. The phrase spread through backstage conversations and explains everything. Instead of risking earthquakes and unstable soil, it is safer to turn the project into an infinite money source. The bridge was never a monument to connection. It was always a monument to billing. And when the government needs to justify more funding, they say it is necessary to study the seismic activity, review calculations, update permits, bring in new specialists. Every delay appears technical, but it is financial. In the end, the bridge exists only in renderings. And this is when the viewer realizes something uncomfortable. While the country debates the future of the Strait of Messina, there are groups rooting for delays. Because for them, profit does not come from the finish line. It comes from the path. And this path is longer than any bridge. Since the end of World War II, Italy has had more than 70 different governments. That means no plan lasts long enough to mature. Every party that takes power wants to erase everything the previous one did and start over from zero. When it comes to the Sicily Bridge, the scenario is always the same. One government approves it, the next cancels it, the next revives it. And nothing happens. For any major project, what matters most is not money or design, but continuity. But in a country where prime ministers fall faster than chiefs of staff change assistants, continuity is a luxury. A project of this magnitude requires stability, and stability is exactly what Italy does not have. Meanwhile, consulting firms continue being paid. The irony is brutal. When they want to approve the project, they say the bridge will unite the country. When they want to cancel it, they say it is too expensive or too risky because of seismic activity. Every argument adapts to the political moment. The project becomes a campaign tool, not a progress plan. That is why the bridge was never about engineering. It was about vanity, about propaganda, about rhetoric. Promising was easy. Delivering was the hard part. And just when everything seemed finally dead, the project returned. And not in some distant past, but in 2023. In 2023, something unexpected happened. The project came back from the dead. The current government announced that construction of the Sicily Bridge would finally begin, with dates and official timelines. Headlines exploded across the country as if a new era had arrived. The promise was clear. This time, it would be real. Spreadsheets began circulating with ambitious schedules. May 2026 for the start of construction, 2032 for completion. Promotional videos showed cars crossing the Strait of Messina in flawless animated simulations. It was impossible not to feel the same spark of hope that had fooled generations. It looked like Italy would finally deliver what it has promised for decades. New studies were commissioned to revise old calculations. Politicians insisted that modern technology would make the project safer, more efficient, and cheaper. But hidden between the lines of the reports, one sentence appeared repeatedly: need for additional updates. And what does an update mean? More contracts, more money, more time. And just when enthusiasm begins to grow, the ghost of the past appears. Ferry systems still operate daily and generate profits for many. Companies linked to the Italian Mafia are still active and ready to jump on any opportunity. And the question that echoes is simple: will the bridge finally leave the paper? Or are we just repeating the eternal cycle? The idea is seductive. A massive suspension bridge linking two worlds that spent centuries apart. It would be more than steel and cables. It would be a symbol of overcoming. Imagine leaving Sicily by car and reaching the mainland in minutes. No lines, no waiting, no ferries. This vision touches the pride of a people exhausted by empty promises. Economists predict that tourism would explode. Hotels, restaurants, and stores would grow. Young people who left could return. Companies that ignore the island would finally recognize its economic potential once connected to the rest of Europe. The bridge would have real impact on quality of life, something no political speech has delivered. But then comes reality. The same waters of the Strait of Messina that separate the island from the mainland also separate dream from execution. Unpredictable waves, treacherous winds, violent currents. And all of this in a zone marked by intense seismic activity. A project of this scale requires more than engineering. It requires courage to face everything that has already gone wrong. And while experts debate calculations and risks, another silent question emerges. Is it worth changing the destiny of millions, knowing nature might not forgive? The answer is not in engineering. It is in the impact this construction would have on marine life itself. When politicians talk about the Sicily Bridge, they show cars crossing the sea as if it were a luxury commercial. But no one shows the migration routes that pass exactly through that area. Whales, dolphins, and dozens of species use this region as a natural corridor to feed and reproduce. A project this big does not affect only people. It affects entire ecosystems. During construction, massive machinery would drill into the seabed of the Strait of Messina, releasing vibrations and noise pollution that alter the behavior of marine animals. Studies show that cetaceans can abandon areas where noise reaches extreme levels. And when a species changes its route, the balance of everything around it changes as well. Environmental specialists warn that this infrastructure project could alter sediments at the bottom of the sea, affecting water transparency and the nutrient cycle. Even small debris can harm fish and microscopic organisms that support the entire food chain. Nature operates under a delicate balance, and any intervention must be surgical. And even if everything is done with maximum care, one question remains unanswered. Is it worth transforming one of the most important ecological corridors of the Mediterranean into a traffic lane just to prove that a suspension bridge is possible? Because when you look at the world, some countries have already found smarter alternatives for similar challenges. When you look beyond Italy, you realize the world has faced challenges just as big and solved them. The Hong Kong-Macau Bridge connects 3 cities through 34 miles of open sea, using artificial islands and underwater tunnels. In Japan, the Akashi-Kakyo Bridge was built across an active seismic zone and has the longest suspension span ever constructed. Everything tested, everything delivered. No decades of excuses. These gigantic projects reveal something crucial. When political will exists, engineering finds the way. The problem with the Sicily Bridge was never technology. It was always priority. In other countries, governments decided the project was strategic. In Italy, priorities shifted with election cycles. And the contrast is obvious. Hong Kong and Japan dealt with geology, extreme climate, and deep waters. The Strait of Messina deals with politics, bureaucracy, and the Italian Mafia. While other countries build to unite, Italy debates to delay. A project that should be a symbol of progress became a showcase of stagnation. In the end, when you observe these bridges around the world, one conclusion is unavoidable. Other countries had the will, and no one on the inside trying to sabotage the project. And now that you have seen everything behind this dream, only one thing is left: the hook and the final conclusion. In the end, the problem was never technology, earthquakes, or engineering. The biggest obstacle has always been to many people profiting from the delay. When hidden interests control the future of millions, even a 3-kilometer bridge can become impossible. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to keep learning about the hidden forces behind the world's biggest decisions.